One of the most tantalizing thoughts for any Pokemon fan is wondering what it would be like to have an open world Pokemon game. That seems like the closest thing to having a real life Pokemon experience, right? But then why don't we already have an adventure like this in front of us? Is this even possible? Well, that's what this video is about. Let's go and break down what it could take to have an open world Pokemon game and if it would be as great as we think it could be. Well, we actually have a couple of games that could represent this for us. That Pixelmon was a massive success before it got shut down, which also leaves questions if it was shut down because Game Freak is trying to make room for an official open world Pokemon experience or maybe something else. Also, we have Pokemon Go. That Pokemon Go is the open world Pokemon experience and it is as close to real life Pokemon as we have. You run out over there where there's a Pokemon, you catch the Pokemon, and then you get to train it up however you need to, and then you're going to be good to go. Now, neither of these are perfect, but it does show that there is the possibility of kind of just having a free roaming Pokemon adventure, and Pixelmon does it in a really interesting way that could potentially tie in to future Pokemon games. But unfortunately, when you think about it, the current graphics of Pokemon would make that really difficult. That for the most part, it's like top down or has kind of a side angle, so the first person experience necessary to kind of convey the most about an open world Pokemon game would be pretty hard to implement for Pokemon. However, it would still be very possible to do like top down and have a traditional Pokemon experience, but just to where you aren't as gated. And I think that's what a lot of Pokemon fans are looking for now after over 20 years of just being stuck to following the story and then kind of doing whatever the game tells you instead of running over there and finding an adventure. But is it even possible? Recently, we've had some interviews from Game Informer with Masuda and Omori, and they actually talked about the idea of a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild scale open world Pokemon game, and at best they've called it a possibility. That they say they don't know if it's going to be the best suited for going out and catching Pokemon, but that's in direct comparison to Breath of the Wild, and they even admit that it is a possibility, and if there were changes to how the adventure would need to play out, it seems like something that could be done because a lot of fans want this experience. So the dream isn't really dead, but at the same time, it seems like it's not going to be like Breath of the Wild, but I don't know if we really want it to be that way. It would still have to have its own unique aspects that would make it suitable for Pokemon and a Pokemon adventure. It kind of adds a little bit of a twist as to what's going on with the Pixelmon mod being shut down, but as it stands, it's a possibility even if they're not sure what to do with it just yet. Now, what I wanted to do was look at existing Pokemon games and see if there was any analog for some kind of freeform or open world Pokemon experience, and crazily enough, the first generation games have the most freedom. That pretty much what you do is you go to Pewter City, you go to Cerulean City, and then all of this is yours. Like, you actually don't even have to beat Lieutenant Surge because he lets you use Fly. Now, it does speed things up, but you can hit up any of the other gyms that you want. You can train as you need to. And then the weird thing is, you really only need Surf to get to Blaine's gym, so that seems like kind of an intentional thing. That means you get to go to the last gym and then through Victory Road, and then you do need all of the badges to prove your worth to go to Victory Road and then challenge the champion. But that's kind of like the crazy thing about it, is that I didn't really understand it as a kid because I thought, you know, Surge was necessary, then you can kind of do whatever you want, but overall, you have a lot of freedom in the original Pokemon games, and it's kind of sad to see that over the years, the freedom has been cut back more and more, and then you even had quite a bit in Gen 2. That once you got Surf in Ecruteak City, well, you could start heading over to Mahogany Town, or there's also 2 badges that you can find over in this side of the region. So Gen 2 has a surprising amount of freedom, but then it seems to have gone downhill since then, and Pokemon Sun and Moon is the most linear Pokemon game that we've had so far. The game does not let you do anything until you complete your current task, and then it throws you into the next task. So very linear right there. And then X and Y, in the interview that Game Informer had, they even talked about like X and Y was supposed to be about that friendship, that adventure right there. So you're also kind of locked down in the experience that way. But I was looking at some other regions, and really interesting things happen. Sinnoh seems like the perfect candidate for a really good open world Pokemon experience. Sinnoh could be really nice. You just have your starting area, you work your way to the first couple of towns, and then boom! The rest of the region is very connected. That's when we find out how Game Freak has limited free exploration in the past, and that's through the use of HMs, badges, and so on, but also by kind of throwing in the occasional bad guy as well. Oh man, these evil people are blocking our way, so we have to go and overthrow their plan before we can move on to get the badge, to get the HM, to then go and explore. But I think it was done in a really interesting way, that you couldn't go over here without Surf. Also, the mountains in the way kind of made it hard without Rock Climb and Strength, and then Defog made life a lot easier for getting through the rest of the region. But it seems like Sinnoh would be a great place to have at least a more open Pokemon experience. I'm wondering if that's something that could be toyed with as we look into the future Pokemon games, and potentially a 4th generation remake that it seems like a pretty solid region to do so. So you know what? Let's get crazy. I was thinking, what if we just had like some kind of blank slate part of the Pokemon world, or even a new region that was fitting for an open world Pokemon experience? Now, naturally, I'm going to use the Breath of the Wild map just as some kind of like simple and familiar idea that we could see if it's even possible to design a Pokemon experience around it. So we would just have like some kind of starting area. Now, personally, I think just like a starting area in the center, or similar to like the early generation games that, yo, by the way, Victory Road and the main area is over here, that all you have to do is just walk a little bit and then you're going to go to the Elite Four. So kind of think keeping everything central feels about right, but then that's where your experience kind of gets crazy. That there's already cities and towns, even like dangerous parts of the game. As we saw with Death Mountain and Breath of the Wild, it's like, oh yeah, it's a popular tourist place, you know, people just run up here all the time because they enjoy it. I think that'd be another really awesome part about the Pokemon games, is that you would have to talk to people or else you would just get absolutely wrecked. Because, alright, maybe there's a little bit of guidance, you know? The same thing that happened in Breath of the Wild, it's like, oh, by the way, you should try to go out to these like nicer areas over here, and then as your adventure expands, you start going to harder and harder parts of the map. So I think that could be a really fun thing that could be done. It's like, hey, you know what? I recommend you go to like the first gym leader. You know, you test out your luck over at this town or something like that, or maybe you go to the Pokemon school over there, and then that's when the world starts to open up to you. But if you're really confident in your skills as a trainer, then you might just say, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna start going and see if I can just go and catch like a fully evolved Pokemon, or maybe go and fight my way to legendaries immediately and something like that. So I mean, all the ideas might sound crazy, but let's also think about it from how HMs and all those things could apply. That maybe it wouldn't be 100% necessary to beat all the gyms, that the gyms are just there to kind of like teach you something. I think with the new Poke Ride feature, that could be something that's actually done. Like, Poke Ride actually gives you these different perks that can be used for beating the game. Like, you have a Pokemon that actually travel through a sandstorm. That way it's going to be easier to kind of like go through the sandy areas of the map. Or also bring back Rock Climb. You just get a Rock Climb Poke Ride Pokemon, and then that means you can really easily make it to one of the towns or one of the gyms that's on top of a mountain or something like that. Surf, maybe just have like a large water area of the map. Actually, if we're doing like Breath of the Wild, that means the water area would be more to the south or something. So that means instead of like having to find like a really crazy route to get to the water area, or instead of skipping it entirely, you know, if you skip that area, you're not going to be able to get the Pokemon exclusive to that part of the region. So maybe there's really powerful water type Pokemon, or maybe there's a really special forest that once you cross the ocean, you go to an island that has rarer, stronger Pokemon that you can use in battle that would help you out as you go through it. So maybe just kind of make it quality of life, accessibility for rare Pokemon, or instead, maybe you could just kind of rush over to an accessible but strong area of the map. Actually, I'm going to use red. You know, it's like, oh, this is a bit more dangerous, a bit more tough, but you know, if you can take an underlevel Pokemon, knock out some Pokemon over here, and then actually just jump some levels, or maybe even catch one of those really powerful Pokemon, that's going to be able to give you a huge advantage as you're also kind of wandering around, you know, battling trainers. Trainers would be interesting, because I feel that would also be like the death mechanic. The one thing that makes Breath of the Wild really fun is just these spectacular ways that you find ways to die. You know, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna run into those guys. Never mind, they're too strong. Oh, and I am massively dead right now. That's kind of one thing. So I mean, would it be as fun? Like, the fun thing about dying is in Breath of the Wild, but I don't think it'd be as fun to lose a wild Pokemon battle or to lose a trainer battle when someone just walks up. It's like, by the way, I am so much more powerful than you right now. You're just going to get one shot by everything on my team. I'm going to go and send you back, you know, a couple minutes or a couple hours back to your last save or back to the last Pokemon Center, because yeah, you don't even belong out here. But I wonder if that would also be another idea. You know, it's like, since it's open world, you'd be able to dodge trainers, then you can more use them to kind of test your skills for the strength of people in that area, or also just make losing a trainer battle less punishing. That's your real world Pokemon experience. That you shouldn't black out every time you lose a Pokemon battle. That's kind of one of the things that we see in the anime. Ash would have like major brain damage if that was something that happened. And also for like legendary Pokemon, having access to HMs or Poke Ride Pokemon, it's like, by the way, you need to get this Poke Ride, that way you can go and get the legendary Pokemons over here, and then once you get that legendary Pokemon, just bounce over the Elite Four and then crush everything, then become the Pokemon champion. Then after that, maybe the world can expand a bit more. I think that's possible, and honestly, to me, the biggest issue would be figuring out what to do with the dang camera. That would be about it. Like, a first-person Pokemon experience would be hard, but making it like Pixelmon, is that something you want? Would you want to be able to look at a Pokemon, go out there and be like targeting it? Like you just walk around an area until a rare Pokemon spawns, and that's kind of the percent chance. Like, oh, 5% chance to spawn, that would work out to just something that just randomly pops in, then you get an opportunity to battle it. Or would you still want tall grass? You know, it's like, oh, the roads are safe, but once you start going to forest, that's where the grass happens, and that's where you just have like the chance of having a wild Pokemon encounter. Now, would that be something that works in first person, or would it still need to be like a Pokemon experience, just kind of, instead of having the 3D Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sword fighting kind of map style, that it's like, okay, all of these things would just be grass patches instead. Now, that would take like a bajillion years to draw all of the grass patches for like a massive Pokemon world, and that would be a very large undertaking for any game developer to do as well, but I feel like that would still be nice, just kind of keeping the core aspects of Pokemon right there, and then it could still be like a top-down or a traditional Pokemon style game, that just because it's going to be open world doesn't mean that we have to have Breath of the Wild with Pokemon or an exact Pixelmon kind of game, but at least just kind of giving us the freedom to do what we want. Give us more choice in the gyms that we can actually conquer instead of just being thrown in a straight line around the map. That, you know, ever since like the 5th and 6th generations, even though it's kind of like a larger circle, you kind of have to take a predetermined path around and then it all comes together in like one of the main cities, but you couldn't just like leave the city. It's like, hey, why are these people allowed to go past the barrier, but I'm not? You have to also think of an open world Pokemon experience about all the people that live there. That there's going to be a lot of towns, there's going to be a lot of populated areas, and there's also going to be a lot of trainers that have done the same thing that you have. So that's what I really like about the idea of a Pokemon world, is that, you know, there's old people that have been Pokemon champions, they've been Pokemon masters, they've held the title, but now they're retired, or they're just like, they're more chill about it instead of just being like this wide-eyed kid that goes around having crazy adventures. I mean, look at the people that are kahunas. That these people have been touched, they've been gifted by the island deities, the legendary Pokemon that look over an entire island. All of the people that rely on that Pokemon for relative safety, there's just people that are like, yeah, I battle in the name of this Pokemon, and then I'm going to retire, and that's going to be a pretty cool story, wouldn't it? And then you have, like, that next batch. So I kind of like that. I kind of like the idea of growing through your own adventure instead of being forced through the gyms and, oh, by the way, you become champion. How cool is that? I'm not saying that's bad and that it hasn't been a complete failure for Pokemon up until this point. Now that it's been 20 years, we've had games like Breath of the Wild, we've had games like Minecraft that have kind of changed the formula as to what gaming is. And I think I just want something that feels like a more real-life Pokemon experience. What I really like about the Pokemon Adventures manga is that it feels like something real. It feels like exactly how a Pokemon experience could go, running into legendaries, running into really evil people, but also making friends in a way that isn't as scripted, that also isn't as dumbed down like in the anime. So I would want to carve my own path. You know, it's like, how reckless would I be? Well, I'd charge into a legendary, get bopped a bajillion times, and you just stand no chance whatsoever. Would I try to like take the easy route and just kind of, you know, have a nice Pokemon experience? I think that you could have multiple replay value with that, then still have a lot of cool things that could potentially happen. And there we go, guys. This might have felt like a jumbled video. There's a lot of ways that you could break down the idea of just an open world Pokemon experience. So tell me what you think. Did I get things really wrong? Do I have the right idea in some places? Or how would you do an open world Pokemon game differently? I feel that just having a crazy map that has rare Pokemon kind of scattered about, and then you talk to people to get the ideas and regions of the Pokemon, if you really want to and you had like the right tactics and the right precision, you can go and catch an over-level Pokemon to kind of help you just make it a little further in your adventure a little quicker. So guys, enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.